thank the ranking member for his colorful remarks and turn to Chairman Durbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Senator Kennedy for holding this important hearing today. I want to thank Judge Wolf for his willingness to testify about the role the Judicial Conference Committee on Financial Disclosure plays or fails to play when it comes to overseeing Supreme Court justices' compliance with the Ethics in Government Act. I'd like to start by saying that Senator Kennedy, my friend, has identified May 4th, 2020, as the kickoff date for this so-called political exercise. I would like to show to my colleague and put in the record a copy of the letter which I sent, signed by Senator Leahy, Senator Whitehouse, and others, to Chief Justice John Roberts, dated February 13th, 2012. February 13th, 2012, 8 years before this date in 2020. And what were we asking or making inquiry on? We were asking about information on the Code of Ethics and the Code of Conduct and the ethical behavior of the Supreme Court justices, in particular one whose situation had come to light, who had been receiving some gifts of some sort, and his wife had been receiving some income which was not properly reported. So to say this all started in May 4th, 2020 is just plain wrong. I've got the letter here to prove it, and I ask consent to enter it into the record. Let me go further and say that for more than a decade since sending this letter and before, I've been calling on Supreme Court justices to be held to this, at a minimum, to the same ethical standards as every other federal judge. That's the outrage that precipitated the comments by the ranking member. The notion that the Supreme Court justices, all 9 of them, would be held to the same ethical standards. As I mentioned, I started that in February 2012. I want to commend the chairman, Senator Whitehouse, who has really done yeoman's duty in pursuing this issue long before the current publication by ProPublica of information that brings us here today. I thank him for his leadership in that, and I think he is appropriately chairing this subcommittee on the courts at a moment in history when he's needed now more than ever. I again urge Chief Justice Roberts, after the recent ProPublica revelations about luxury vacations and travel given to the Supreme Court Justice by billionaire Harlan Crow. I invited the Chief Justice on behalf of the committee, Democrats in the committee, to testify on this issue. He declined. I'm sorry that he did. I then called on him to rescue the reputation of the court by simply taking action to respond to this well-documented outrage. For anyone, including my colleagues in the Senate on both sides of the aisle, to believe that this is normal, acceptable conduct for an elected official, Supreme Court Justice, Senator, to be receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gifts and vacations, to have your mother's home purchased by an individual so she doesn't have to pay a mortgage any longer. The list just goes on and keeps moving on. And the American people don't understand this. As Judge Wolf, I read your statement this morning, and I'm not going to quote it because maybe some elements that you want to quote yourself in your opening statement. But what this court has to rely on is a confidence of the American people in the integrity of justices when they hand down decisions. If they hand down controversial decisions and the American people don't like them, they can at least say, well, that's the court. They go their own way. But if there is any question about the integrity and character of these justices, it really undermines the institution of the court. That's why I appealed directly to Chief Justice Roberts. This is the Roberts court. This is his court in history. And what he chooses to do by way of ethics is going to be remembered for generations. I believe he can, and I hope he will step up, raise his hand, and say that's the end of the special treatment for Supreme Court justices. They will be held to the same ethical standards as every other federal judge. That's not too much to ask. It's the very least we should ask. I thank you, Judge Wolf, for being here today. I read your testimony in its entirety this morning. I'm looking forward to ask you a few questions after you've had an opening statement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.